I thought I was off the hook. Like I was like, yeah, if I played hooky for one day, no one was gonna know. And turned on my phone and it was like 47 missed calls.
Welcome to Richer Lives by SoFi. I'm Vivian Tu, aka Your Rich BFF, and today I'm joined by actor, producer, and Shang-Chi himself, Simu Liu.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to jump into our conversation. You've been really open about growing up in an immigrant family, something that I am very familiar with, and how money was a source of tension in your household. So I'd love to ask, kind of, what is your first memory about money? What is your earliest money memory?
So I was raised by my grandparents until I was 4.5. It's a bit of an unconventional upbringing if you're not
special.
Chinese, but
I, too, was raised by my grandparents.
It happens a lot. I was going to say it's not as uncommon in Chinese households. So I think, coming to Canada for the first time and being introduced to this idea of frugality as kind of a way of life. And even though I think, my life in China was, I think on the surface, just like it was very simple, but it was also like, I never really felt like I was constrained. It wasn't until I actually got to Canada that I really felt this like massive pressure to save money, 省钱, 省钱, always. And I think immigration maybe looks a little bit different today, or there's many different types of it, but around our parents' generation, I'm going to assume that we're the same age, I'm not going to ask, but around our parents' generation, it very often was like, people coming over with absolutely nothing, no money in their pockets, just hopes and dreams of building a life. And with that, the anxiety of like, I have no safety net. Yeah. I have no parents to fall back on. I have no friends that could lend me money. It's sink or swim. And so, you make every dollar count. You make every penny count, actually.
Yeah. This literally just feels like, going through my own past history. Once your parents—
We're the same person.
We are.
Yes.
I'm a little taller, but
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we can fact check.
Yeah. We'll fact check that one later. But looking back now, is there something that you wish you understood sooner about both, your parents, but also money?
I think it's very difficult for someone at age, say 12, 13, to have a full grasp of the magnitude of that sacrifice.
Yeah.
Maybe just to understood the magnitude of just how, I guess, traumatic it is to uproot your entire life at age, my parents were like 29, 30, to uproot your entire life and to move to a country where you do not speak the language, you have no idea of how the society functions, what the culture is. If I understood that a little bit better, I might have been more sympathetic to them. But instead, and I think this is also very understandable, I rebelled against everything that they were trying to tell me to do because I was like,
American
I don't want
teenagers.
it. Yeah.
Our parents coming here as immigrants were focused on just surviving. But I always say, in my life, I feel like I want more. I want to thrive. I don't want to just survive. Do you feel like there was a pivotal moment in your life where you went from just thinking about survival to actually wanting more and thriving?
For me, a lot of my life had been about survival up until the point that, so I had graduated from college, I got a job as an accountant working at Deloitte, and then 8 months into that job, I got fired. And I think it wasn't until then that I really started to check in with myself for the first time, insofar as allowing myself permission to pursue something that was so off the beaten path. And I wouldn't say that was like necessarily in that moment a thriving, but I think it was the first moment where I allowed myself to think about life, not in terms of appeasing my parents or appeasing some sort of preconceived notion of success, and rather learning to define it for myself. And that was something I'd never been taught to do, was to listen to my heart or listen to my passion, my interest. There was never like, let's figure out what kind of person you are. Let's figure out what you like first. It was always like, no, you get your A's so that you can go to med school. And you know, not that I knew that I was going to be like a working actor right away, but I think I was curious enough that I wanted to give it a shot, and I didn't necessarily know where that path would take me, but I'm very glad that I took that initial leap. Obviously, it's worked out okay. Yeah.
That is such an immigrant thing to say when you have like a great career and you're like, it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. You know, I'm still not a doctor, so my parents will never have that.
Right.
But
right.
I'll play one on TV one day.
Right. Your name's not popping off in the WeChat.
No. And I didn't go to Harvard.
Tough. Looking back, obviously now, we all know that being an accountant at Deloitte was not your dream. However, when you did get that first job offer, talk to me about how you were defining success. And like, I mean, you had to have been stoked, right?
I was relieved.
Okay.
I was relieved because I felt like so much was riding on this education, you know, all of the intergenerational pressure that we've been talking about, the parents like breathing down my neck about, okay, what are you going to do? Like it was already a concession for them, the entire business thing. You know, if it were up to them, I'd be something more STEM related.
You'd be surgeoning.
Totally. So it was already kind of a letdown. And, you know, that pressure had been mounting in me too of like, why am I not a better student? Like, why am I not reading the Wall Street Journal every morning? And you know, if it was not something that I was innately so obsessed with and so passionate about, it was just impossible for me to retain information.
Yeah.
And so I just physically could not do it. And so getting that job, getting that offer, accounting jobs at some of the lowest starting salaries. And, you know, it came when all the other, you know, all the investment bankers got their offers and management consultants and everyone else already had theirs. And so it kind of felt like I got the last train out of town. And I managed to get on. And I was like, thank God. I did it. It's going to be okay. You know, it was like my imposter syndrome was like abated for just like, okay, made it to the next one.
Yeah.
You know,
live to fight another day.
Exactly. Not understanding that, you know, the first day that you show up for work post-grad, it's like, you know, in every other juncture of life up until that point, it was like, oh, this is like a semester.
Yeah.
You take this class and then, you know, you're done. You do well, you don't do well, but you're done in a number of months. I was very like shocked with the realization that going to work on my first day, I'm like, oh no, this is forever.
Yeah, you're staring down 40 years.
Stop now. Exactly. And that was tough.
Yeah. You mentioned that accounting had one of the lowest starting salaries. Can you tell me how much you were making at the time?
Yeah. I made my starting offer was 45,000 Canadian dollars out of graduation.
What is the exchange rate between the Canadian dollar to the US dollar?
Right now, it's pretty bad.
Oh, okay.
I think back then it was a little bit more equal. Let's say, let's call it an even 40. Let's call it an even 40, which I don't even know what that would be equivalent to in today's standards.
Yeah, today we'd have to calculate inflation.
Because it was a long time ago. I get it. I'm old. But
what'd your lifestyle look like? Did you have a really nice apartment or?
My parents and I went in on an apartment together, which by that, I mean, they paid most of the down payment. And then I, you know, at least initially was supposed to pay the mortgage. And I did for a little bit before I got fired. You know, it seemed like enough at the time. I really didn't have any concept of, you know, living a lavish life.
Yeah.
So I feel like I had enough at that point to cover base necessities, and it felt like I was living not the dream, but it felt like I was going through the motions and I was living some version of someone's dream, and that I could like show up at a party and say that I worked at Deloitte and, you know, have that be like a point of pride.
Yeah.
That part of it I liked.
Right.
It was everything apart from actually doing the physical work was fine.
Of course.
Yeah.
The part of doing the job.
Yeah, that was, it was a little tiny drawback of I hated the actual work itself. But
telling people you worked at Deloitte.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's a brand name. That's, that's
people recognize that.
Ming Pai is what we say in Chinese.
Oh, yes.
That
Name
is
brand.
Ming Pai. That is a brand name employer to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. JP Morgan.
Aside from making those mortgage payments, do you remember what you did with that first Deloitte paycheck?
Yeah, I bought myself a suit from Hugo Boss.
Love.
Outlet.
Oh, okay.
Because
yes.
we're immigrants.
Right, naturally.
We're
going to get deals.
Splurge, but it was my version of a splurge. Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Never ended up actually wearing it.
Wait, why?
Because first year associates we weren't, not that we weren't allowed to wear suits, but it was really more of a shirt and tie.
Yeah.
Kind of job. Like if I showed up to work with a full, they'd be like,
what are you doing? Are you meeting clients
today? Fuck does this? Yeah, what are you meeting? You meeting clients? Year one junior staff accountant. But still, it was very important to me that I had that. Yeah.
Before we keep going, let's take a quick break to learn how SoFi can help you feel more in control of your finances. Why should I switch banks? My bank is fine. Fine? We're accepting fine for our money now? Let's raise those standards, bestie. With SoFi, you get a savings APY that is way above the national average. 0 account fees, and your paycheck up to 2 days early. Open a SoFi bank account and set up eligible direct deposit, and you'll score a sweet APY boost for 6 months, plus a welcome bonus. You get all of this and more in just one app. So yeah, if you want your money to sit there being fine, stay where you are. But if you want to bank better, go to SoFi.com/banking. Okay, so let's start talking about the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
Clear it up. Were you laid off or were you fired?
Same thing, kind of.
Is it?
Yeah, it was. There was a round of cuts.
Okay. If you were fired on the same day as somebody else, it doesn't count.
Then it's a layoff.
Then it's a layoff, for sure.
I was laid off.
Okay, great.
I was laid off.
Perfect. Okay, I'm glad we could come to that conclusion.
But I did do something that the other candidates did not, the layoff candidates did not do. I did skip work to be an extra on a movie
Pacific Rim.
Pacific Rim, Guillermo del Toro. If it were not for Guillermo del Toro, I would not have, my first experience on a movie set would not have been the blockbuster, sprawling, magnificent spectacle that Pacific Rim was. Yeah. It was everything to me, just watching the hundreds of cast and crew and background, just watching everyone work and move with such purpose. It was completely antithetical to me sitting at a cubicle.
Right.
Watching the clock.
Shirt and tie.
Shirt and tie, watching the seconds tick by. This was everyone just moving together, passionate, wanting to make this cool thing, wanting to make art. And, it clearly was worth it because I was caught.
You were, wait. Did you lie?
Yeah, I was I thought I was off the hook. I was if I played hooky for one day, no one was going to know. And it just so happened that the one day happened to be when one of the senior managers was looking at a spreadsheet that I had done incorrectly.
Okay.
And so wanted to get in touch with me just to be hey, what were you, can you run these numbers again?
Yeah.
And I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I turned my phone off.
D&D.
For the shoot, got out of my, I remember metallic blue makeup at the end of the day and turned on my phone and it was 47 missed calls. And I knew then that I knew right then that I had f***ed up. And I walked into my partner's office the next day. I was very apologetic and it seemed like they understood, but then I was fired less than 2 weeks later.
Mm-hmm. Laid off
on a technicality because there were, I think, 2 or 3 other people that were let go.
Great.
Yeah.
Laid off.
So it was a round of cuts.
How do you juxtapose the joy and happiness you felt being an extra on Pacific Rim versus, I have to imagine, the financial fear and stress you probably had the following day after being let go?
Sure. Well, I had a bit of severance money to play with.
And they gave you severance? That was definitely a layoff. Come on.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. I feel much better now.
Simu Liu has never been fired. That was a layoff.
It wasn't that much. It was maybe the equivalent of a month's salary on 45 grand a year. So it was like 3,500.
Yeah, okay.
You know? And so I was like, well, maybe, just maybe, this severance money, if I really kind of hunker down, this severance money can last me a little bit more than a month. And I can take this month and just kind of play around.
Yeah.
I'm at rock bottom anyway. I might as well, if I'm going to take a step, it might as well be a step that I want to take. And that was kind of the promise that I made to myself, was that if I ran out of money and I had to go to my parents with my tail between my legs, that, eventually, we'd call it a day, and then I'd probably just get another job and go back to doing the same thing that I've been doing, hopefully not skip work again.
But you dive into acting.
I dive into acting.
Have you had any prior acting experience to that?
No. The closest applicable experience I had was I was on my university's competitive hip hop dance team. I'm gonna need to see some moves after this. We competed once.
Oh, okay.
And I think we came fourth out of like 6 places.
That's not 6 out of 6 places.
It wasn't 6. So I had a certain love of, like, whether it was performance or self-expression, something was there. And those first few months, I get really, really lucky. First, I go on Craigslist. I do everything I can. I answered to every ad, including, very famously being a stock photo model.
That you made like no dollars doing.
$100, and they own those images in perpetuity. I'm doing everything I can. Eventually managed to like land myself an agent. And within those first 2 months, managed to book a couple of really big, like a national commercial, a print campaign, and my first speaking role in a TV show. Like, that all came probably within 60 days of getting laid off, which is unheard of.
What do you think the je ne sais quoi was? Like, why you?
I think a little bit of beginner's luck. I'm not just being humble, but it's like, you imagine you're a casting director in Toronto, Ontario, and all of a sudden, this kid shows up and he's, it's not like I was being asked to do entire monologues. I was being asked to put on an Asian accent and say 2 lines.
Yeah.
And so I think there was something about the freshness of it. It was like, oh yeah. So I got my first speaking credit. I managed to make a little bit of money in that first month, and I very foolishly thought, oh, if I made $7,000 this month, clearly that means that in the year I would make 91.
Yeah, 7 times 12 is
91.
Yeah.
Easy. Sorry, 84.
Yeah.
13 is 91.
We go back.
This is why I'm a failed accountant.
Not great.
Obviously not how things went. I basically didn't book anything for like the next year and a half, but it showed me that it was possible to make a living doing something that I loved.
All of that was in Toronto, but you started eventually working in Hollywood as well. What were some of the financial differences you noticed between working in the US versus working in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge financial difference.
Yeah.
Clearly, if I was being entrepreneurial about it, if I was being pragmatic about it, if I wanted to make a living doing this, I need to figure out a way to get to the States, which, by the way, for a Canadian is not super easy. There's legal fees that are, you have to get a visa, and in order to get a work visa, you have to prove that you're an alien of extraordinary ability. So you have to, you have to make a case for yourself to be able to be given the privilege of auditioning in the States. And so, I started on that process, and it was around the time I also booked this show called Kim's Convenience, which thankfully was, was one of my first like lead roles, and got me to a level of notoriety within the kind of small ecosystem of Canada that allowed me to get the work visa so that I could start coming out to the US for the first time. But all of that, not knowing if anything was guaranteed or waiting for me on the other side, but just out of this like overwhelming sense of like, I can't just be a big fish in this tiny little pond and make $800 a day when the guy that moved to LA that's doing the exact same job is making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for an episode.
You couldn't unsee.
I could not unsee how much that guy vividly just remember, like, I was like, you're making how much? But I have more lines than you this episode. Like, I am physically doing more than you. And he's like, yeah, man, but like, got an American agent, you know?
Yeah.
Got an American rep, and we negotiated with the American casting director, and they have their budget is different than the Canadian local actor budget. It's not the same. Any chance that I got, I think I was trying to tell my co-stars, I was like, guys, they're making like huge amounts of money over there. Meanwhile, we were, on, the Canadian Broadcast Corporation was half funded by the Canadian government. We were making like, as leads of a hit television show, less than $8,000 an episode. Sure, it was a gamble to try to go to the States, but like, it was kind of almost like survival in a way.
Do you remember how much money you had in your bank account before booking Kim's Convenience?
Yeah, negative dollars.
Negative
I
dollars.
was, whatever money I had in my bank account, I had more in credit card debt. And I was one of those minimum balance payers and all of the things that we all know. And I went to business school. I knew this was a bad idea.
This was a cardinal sin.
Totally. But I had no options.
Right.
I just didn't, I tried to pay what I could. And, but I was carrying
How much
balance.
credit card debt did you have at the time?
Well, it wasn't crazy because no bank would give an actor a credit card with a huge limit anyway. I think I had like $5,000.
Yeah.
So somewhere in the fours probably I was carrying, and I never had $4,000 in my bank account. I mean, that'd be unheard of.
Touchy question. Did your
Sure.
parents know you were in that position?
I think they did. They did. When I first broke the news to them that I was going to give this acting thing a try. I mean, you can imagine how they
Like a
took
lead
it.
balloon?
Totally. And fair enough, I'd gone to private school. My parents paid for my entire post-secondary education. Like, I was very, very fortunate in that way of, because my parents were so frugal, they had saved up enough money at that point to pay my tuition.
100%.
And I'm so incredibly grateful for that. And at the same time, completely understand why they would freak out if all of a sudden their son one day decided to throw away everything that, we had all kind of cumulatively been investing in to be an actor?
Yeah.
Like, what the f***?
Fake job.
It's a fake job. It is, and I work in the industry and I know it's a fake job. It's a fake job.
Yeah.
So it was a difficult bit of news to receive on their part. But even in our years of not really being on the same page and not really talking, I was going back on my emails between my parents and I around that time, and it was a lot of passive aggressive, digs at each other about how they don't support any, and didn't support any of my life decisions. But there was one from Christmas 2013, and it was from my dad, and he was like, even though we don't support what you're going through right now, we just want to make sure that you oh my God. We just want to make sure you have a good Christmas. And they had like sent me like $1,000 just to make sure, just as, it spoke to, no matter what, at the end of the day, I think just how much our parents are willing, have sacrificed and are willing to sacrifice for us.
Yeah.
So I was very moved by that. Yeah.
They show love in different ways.
Yeah. Not by saying it out loud, but I mean that's
fruit.
They cut fruit. They send you $1,000 at Christmas. I was very fortunate. Yeah.
And ultimately, Kim's Convenience hits Netflix. Excuse my ignorance, but did you make a bunch of money when that happened? Like royalties, residuals? How does that work?
Well, when you when you have a Canadian agent, those things don't really work. Yeah, residuals and royalties and bonuses, those are really American terms. Yeah, it didn't change my financial situation, but it changed everything else.
Right.
We went from being a little Canadian sitcom to kind of like a global sensation. I mean,
People started recognizing you.
people started recognizing me, and not just, when I was, on Queen Street in downtown Toronto. It was like I was on vacation in Mexico. There are still, to this day, just as many people that come up to me and talk to me about Kim's Convenience than the Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
This show that I made no money doing, this show that the Canadian Broadcast Corporation put like less than $1 million into, thinking that it was going to be a fun little Canadian family sitcom. Sometimes you have to have what's called a lost leader in order for the money to come.
Okay, Costco rotisserie chicken. I understand.
It's the rotisserie chicken.
Yeah.
Exactly. The things that will make you money don't always feel lucrative in the moment. They can, but not always. Not always. And for Kim's Convenience, I mean, when I think of everything that came as a direct result of that, I mean, it was a golden egg. I just didn't know it at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of money, let's take a quick break to learn how SoFi can help you build a richer life. I owe more on my student loans than when I started. Please help. Here's the thing about student loans. When you signed them, you were just doing what was best at the time. But now you're a legit adult who knows better, and SoFi can help. They've got flexible term options and competitive rates for paying down your loan sooner or lowering your monthly payments, with no fees required either. You're not the same person who signed that loan. Your terms shouldn't be either. Get started at sofi.com/refinance-student-loan. Ultimately, through a path of zigs and zags and a lot of in-betweens, it feels like almost overnight, maybe not to you, but for a lot of us watching at home, you were able to go from being a character on Kim's Convenience to being a superhero, Shang-Chi. Like, what did it feel like, thinking about your ceiling in Hollywood and all of a sudden you're a Marvel superhero?
I remember when they first announced the movie, and the first thought that I had was, I'm going to be so freaking jealous of whoever books this role, because it ain't going to be me. It's like it felt like they were casting for Harry Potter. It was well, everyone wants to be Harry Potter, so obviously it's not going to be me. Yeah, I'll punch a lottery ticket, but like, there's no way. There's tons of people out there that are taller, that are better martial artists, better looking, better actors, whatever have you. Like, there's just no way.
Why the imposter syndrome?
I mean, Asian, immigrant.
Okay. Don't we feel like every version of Shang-Chi was going to be Asian? No?
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's this imposter syndrome that is so innate to the immigrant experience, right? Because every day we are trying to fit in. Every day we are praying that, we are not exposed for the frauds that we are, because we don't come from generations of Americans or Canadians. We don't come from old money. We don't come from this culture. We are adapting. We are, we're trying to catch up. We're trying to fit in at every single possible juncture. And so, I think everyone feels imposter syndrome to some degree. I'm definitely empathetic to that. But immigrants feel it, I think, on a whole different level, in a way that's like, you shouldn't even call it imposter syndrome. It's just alive. And the few moments where you don't feel imposter syndrome are actually like a different syndrome, like white people syndrome. Okay. It's like, oh, I feel like I'm belonging. I feel like I have white people syndrome. This is weird. But still, I send in the tape. I get told that I'm too old, or that whatever, like, oh, they've passed. Okay. And I'm like, great, good. I gave it a fair shot. Yeah. Move on with my life. I auditioned for, I think, Mortal Kombat or something else. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get that. And then a couple of weeks go by, and Then my manager calls me and he's like, they looked at your tape again. And it was and I remember, like, I still get the chill down my spine thinking of it, because I had put it away in my mind.
Yeah.
I had already designated that part as not mine, and it didn't belong to me. It never did. And then it was the first little inkling of like, oh, fuck, maybe there's something there. And then, so I flew to LA for a callback, and I met Destin, the director, and we had what I think was a really good, positive session where, you know, it's like kind of all went by in a blur. Like if I could direct it, it would be like you would cut to me walking out of the room, just like I have no idea what happened, like totally in a daze. And truth be told, I think that's how I remember it. Like, it just, some things happened. I think at one point, like I threw the pages behind me. We started improving. I don't even know if I was speaking English. Like, it just, something happened in that room. And I came out of it and I was like, I think I'm gonna book this part. And that was, and
Really?
yeah.
I have chills. That's like destiny.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how Shang-Chi shifted how you thought about money right away, because instead of just worrying about making it, now you have enough of it that you have to worry about how you're allocating it, how you're investing it, how you're spending it. You actually have discretionary income now.
Yeah. It was a weird kind of full circle moment, because when I began my life as a starving artist, I had kind of put aside everything I learned in business school. And it wasn't until, you know, Shang-Chi and, again, these amounts of money that I had never seen before. All this business school stuff was coming back in. It was like, you know, time value of money. It was, how do you grow? Discounted cash flow, all of those, you know, crazy things that I thought I would never, ever look at ever again, because I was really committed to like making less than $20,000 a year for the rest of my life. All of a sudden I was like, okay, shoot. Okay, we'll invest, you know, but it, you know, thankfully I did retain like some of what I learned in business school. And, you know, I knew how to diversify a portfolio. I knew how to, at least on some basic level, do some due diligence whenever, you know, I was being approached with an investment opportunity. I kind of generally knew how to sniff the good stuff from the bad. And I could read a financial statement, which meant I can read a contract.
Yeah.
And not to say that there wasn't a massive learning curve with Hollywood otherwise, but yeah, it was weirdly comfortable to kind of step back into that business school version of myself. I think a lot about what my life would look like if I had not gotten Shang-Chi. And it is true that I would be a lot poorer than I am today, but I would be doing everything that I was already doing. I would be doing everything I could to try to create every possible opportunity for myself. I might be making indie films at a smaller budget, or, you know, I might be plugging away at like a little short film, or, you know, something, but I'd still be fighting the fight.
Do you think, having been a former B school student, accountant, made you a better entertainer?
I think that the best actors that I've watched on screen draw from their experiences in life. Yeah. I don't necessarily think that being an accountant is the most interesting life experience to draw from. But, you know, I think there's a lesson to be learned from everything. Whether you're an accountant or a doctor, surgeon, there's lessons from everything. And I think our job as actors is to try to find in all the characters that we play something universal and truthful. I think it's cool that I got to live life the way that I did, and I think it's cool that I got to discover acting in the way that I did and in the time of life that I did, rather than just kind of knowing it innately, which I most definitely did not.
Simu, I have had so much fun. I feel like you and I have had such good banter, but also I feel like
It's been
everybody
so fun.
watching at home has learned a lot from your journey. They will get to take all of those helpful nuggets, but also swerve some of those potholes. Tell us what's next for you and where can we find you?
Yeah, I mean, in the immediate horizon, I have this little tiny indie movie called Avengers Doomsday that's coming out. I don't know if you've heard of it, but we hope it'll do well. It's so small.
So small.
Probably no one's ever heard of it, but I'm very excited, for that to come out. I get to reprise this character that's, quite literally given me everything. And, I can't speak enough to just how grateful I've been for this entire journey and how excited I am to have audiences see, I call him Sean, he's Shang-Chi, to see Sean again. And, I think more looking towards the horizon, I think, again, being a B school grad at heart, JP Morgan, Deloitte, we're builders and we're entrepreneurs. And so I think I was never going to be content sitting back and just allowing myself to be defined by a role, by, an opportunity that was given, which I'm very grateful for. But I have every intention of using the platform or the resources that I've been given to build something better, bigger, more lasting, and, something that, feels like rather than just a very, very meaningful role, is something that can be community building and so can benefit not just myself, but people around me. And so, I've been wanting to start a production company for a very long time. I think we're in a place where we're ready to do that, which is awesome. But what a production company allows me to do as a storyteller, as an entrepreneur, is to take more agency in my career so that, I'm not just waiting for the next destined to call and for us to have that lightning moment in a room. It's like, no, I can be the engineer of my own destiny. I can create these opportunities. I can make a call that puts somebody in a room with me, and then we can build something together. I think we're still dealing with an industry that is slow to change, and especially in these moments where we hear the word industry contraction a lot. It's in these moments of contraction when key decision makers will default to what they know, and oftentimes what they know is what has worked in the past or just what they've done in the past. And it's not even necessarily stuff that has worked. And, when these things happen, catchphrases and buzzwords like diversity and inclusion, they start to feel more like risk. When I think the reality is that it's not risky at all. It's actually really good storytelling. But, that's the reality of where we're at. And rather than just typing away at social media and, complaining about the state of affairs, I want to be a part of the change. So that's, having a production company, being generative, being entrepreneurial, that's one of the ways that I know how to do that. So that's what I'm
putting your
most
money where your
excited
mouth
to do.
is.
Absolutely.
These days, looking at your career, it's been incredibly illustrious, if I do say so myself. Do you feel like you have an enough number, like an amount of money where you'd feel financially secure no matter what?
Yeah, it would probably be an amount at which I felt like the interest of it just sitting in like a treasury bond would be enough to cover all of my annual expenses. And I won't say what that number is, but lifestyle creep is a real thing. So it's a high number. It's a high number.
Yeah.
And let's say interest rates are, I don't know off the top of my head what it is today, but if you're not too risky, you could probably get between 4 and 5%, again, some mixture of like T-bills, fixed income. I guess the way that I think about it is I've already done the most risky possible thing. And so my investment portfolio, my investment strategy needs to counter that. It does not need to mirror that.
Yeah.
It needs to fill my deficiency. It needs to be safe when I am not safe. It needs to be safe so that I can take risks, you know?
I think that's a really wonderful strategy.
Thank you.
And on that note, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for watching Richer Lives. If something from Simu's story stuck with you, drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe so you can be the first to catch our next episode.
Make sure what, sorry?
This just like goes like down.
Oh, yeah. I'll just keep tugging.
Yeah. Must be so hard to get a shirt to fit when you have so many abs.
Oh my God. If only that were true.